Hello, Internet. This is SLCPython.
Coming at you live.
Yeah.
I think you should tell everybody that they have to keep their video on so you make your recording more interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not going to cross that legal train. But yeah, so today, at the end of the meetup, we're going to have these raffle prizes, so definitely stick around. We'll also have a social hour. So today we'll be giving out a Pi badge and a Pi portal once again. So stick around, make sure you're on the Slack, because that's how we figure out who's at the current meetup. And yeah, we'll mail you one of these raffle prizes should you win. So for those who don't know, I'm Faris. There is Dylan and Joe. We are the co-organizers and the people who make up SLCPython, along with all of our Pythonistas from around Utah. We started this about 8 years ago. Holy moly. As of February of this year, it'll be 8 years, right? Wow. And we exist to serve the Utah community, and we think that Python's the way to do that. So let me share my screen, because I'm going off agenda here, as people may be able to tell. Oh, okay. And can everybody see this all right? Feel free to use the built-in reactions on Zoom. As an organizer, I don't think I get to do little thumbs up and stuff, but helps me kind of get a sense. Ooh, there's hearts now? Ah, Zoom updated. Okay.
Apparently there's hearts and ta-das.
Excellent. Thanks. So yeah, here's our agenda. Where are we? So we're SLCPython. We're part of Utah Python, which is kind of the nonprofit for any Python group in Utah that wants to use us as a resource. Python Utah North is an example of one of those groups. They're based out of Logan. And yeah,
welcome to.
Yeah, we've been around for 8 years. I'm still trying to wrap my head around it, because usually every January I'm like, oh, for the soiree, we're going to do this. But we're not really going to do anything specifically like in person, but we do have some ideas that we will disclose probably a little bit later. TBD, more info on that coming later. Other tech groups that people should definitely check out, the PyLadies, Python at the Point, which is more Provo, South Valley, and Girl Develop It. Girl Develop It is language agnostic, but they also host workshops. Utah Data Engineering Meetup. Joe, do you want to give a spiel about them?
Yeah, sure. Utah Data Engineering Meetup is a data engineering meetup, as you might expect it to be. So this month we have Josh Tobin from OpenAI, and what else is he doing? He's starting a full stack machine learning, deep learning course at Berkeley this spring. Probably one of the more knowledgeable people about production and machine learning in the world. So he'll be talking at UDEM about testing machine learning models, and I'm the world's worst organizer, because I can't remember the date, but it is Wednesday, the 20th. So check that out, register, it's going to be great.
Excellent, thank you. And then, oh, okay, and you put it here. Okay, sweet. And then we also have the Data Heretics podcast that Joe's running. Do you want to give a quick spiel on that?
Oh, right. Yeah, so this one will be on, I think, the 21st of this month. So it's a monthly LinkedIn Live group that I do with some other, some company, some data scientists, data engineers from around the world. We've got people from Australia, Singapore, and the US, and myself. So not sure what we'll talk about, but we tend to get a pretty big audience. I think around 400 to 600 people show up. So definitely check it out if you want to watch some data heresy.
Excellent. And I think today's topic is very apropos of that, but we'll see. I'm quite excited. PyData SLC is another meetup, definitely to check out. Language agnostic, SLC devs. I haven't checked on them for a while, but I leave this up here because, yeah. Websites, they need updating. They needed updating in like 2019. So it's definitely on the to-do list. We have GitHub repos if you want to make pull requests to make said updates to said websites. Yeah, sponsors, Pythonistas like you, thank you. We do appreciate any kind of sponsorship. We typically used to take a $5 donation for in-person meetups, but we've of course suspended that for now. But if you would still like to make a donation, you can use the built-in meetup feature to make a donation, or contact us, and that's probably a much better way to go about it, and we can more directly use any kind of sponsorship. Speaking of which, X-Mission has been a long time sponsor of the pizza, which we will not be serving tonight, I hate to say, unless you've ordered pizza on your own, in which case I redact that. University of Utah has been our venue. Hopefully they will become our venue again post-COVID, but we'll see how that goes. And they've been an excellent venue for us to meet at. Tech Systems, what? Hey, Kate, how's it going? Tech Systems has been sponsoring our raffle prizes for quite a bit. And they also had sponsored our soiree in 2020 of February, and that was a lot of fun. Do you want to give the Tech Systems spiel, or shall I? Kate?
Well, gosh, I mean, maybe I'll let you do it for me today.
All right. Well, Tech Systems is the tailored recruiters who will make sure that not only is the company getting the right person, but they're also not going to message you if you put Python on your resume about Java, right? They know what the candidate, where the candidate wants to work. They want to make sure that the candidate's just as happy as the company they match them with. So it's something I appreciated when I was placed, like, oh, wow, like 2013, 8 years. I get to say 8 years for everything now. 2012. Wow, it's like all jumbled. But anyway, did right by me, did right by a lot of friends that I've sent to Tech Systems, and yeah, Kate's one of the good ones, and they've been sponsoring us for quite a while. So yeah, Kate will be around when we get to the who's hiring and who's looking portion of our meetup tonight. So definitely hit her up. I believe you're on our Slack, so it's great. Sponsors are always appreciated. I've logged most of our past expenses. I think I need to catch up for November, December on this one, on this link, and send a message on Meetup or Twitter. We'll take it from there if you're interested in sponsoring, or if your company's interested in sponsoring. We are a 501c3. I just renewed all the stuff like a few weeks ago, so we're good there. So we're tax deductible, which is kind of nice. I don't know how significant that'll be this tax season, but it's still something to consider. The write-offs are a little bit different every year. So let's see, agenda, boom, boom, boom. New members, who's new here? This is where you get to raise your hand and say hi. You can use the participant view. Yeah, there you go.
Hi, I'm Napinai. I'm
Hi.
new here.
Hi. I'll tell you how we're going to do this. Basically, what you're going to do is you'll introduce yourself after I call on you and tell us what you do. And then today, I want to know everybody's New Year's resolution. So I'm Faris. I'm senior backend janitor at Invite. That's how I introduce myself to everybody, Johnny, by the way. And my New Year's resolution, I want to learn a bit of more Mandarin. I want to I started picking up phrases here and there as my partner's like trying to teach Felix some Chinese, and I want to pick it up as well. So I downloaded an app. I've been trying to do it every day, and don't tell Lexi. She never watches these, so if she watches it later and it's like, oh, that's why, it's gonna hopefully be a surprise. But that's my New Year's resolution, is I want to surprise either her or her family a little bit. So yeah, so we'll start with sorry, is it Adita? Do you want to introduce yourself? I think you're muted. No? Okay, we'll move on. Oh, there we go.
I'm Napinai. I have been with IT for quite some time, for many years now. I started with mainframes, and then I have worked in various roles. in IT, and then I recently did a course from University of Utah in data science. I want to enter the field of data science right now. So I've been learning R and Python, and then I did a lot of projects in R as part of academics. And then I'm looking forward to enter this field. And my New Year resolution is no more procrastination on anything.
Nice. I got a trick for you there, because that's definitely been a thing for me, is just do the thing and set a 90-second timer. Some people say 5 minutes, but seriously, I have a 90-second timer that's like just a thing ready to go on my watch. And I start like vacuuming or cleaning or whatever it is for 90 seconds. And if I can get my head in the game for 90 seconds, I know I can keep going. But sometimes I can't, and it's okay. If you can't do it for 90 seconds, it's okay. It just means you're tired. So
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
Good
And Kate is the one who invited me for the meeting. Thank you so much, Kate.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Kate. Well,
It's
you're
good to see
among
you
You
all.
bet.
people.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Let's go on to, I'm going to just go in order here that I'm seeing. Reed.
Yeah, so my name is Reed Empey. I was actually just going over recently. I wanted to see what was going on meetup.com to see what sort of groups and different things I can be involved with. I graduated from BYU in last April, actually, and have been trying to figure out different things. I actually took Taylor's machine learning for economic students. I was an economics major at BYU. And so that's what was so funny, because I went on there, I was like, oh, Tyler's doing a presentation, so I'd love to participate. So I'm wanting to improve my Python abilities, but also go to more full stack sort of things. I've been learning some more front end things, which is so foreign for someone who's just dabbled in programming, just normal Python and maybe a little bit of JavaScript. And so anyway, I'm trying to see what the future brings in that way. And my New Year's resolution, one of them so far, is to make a daily meditation a part of my my daily routine. That's something that I much need right now. I think a lot of us need it right now, but anyway, that's me.
That's excellent. And you know what? Self-care like that, I am a total big fan of. I always end our meetups by saying the same thing, but if anybody ever needs to talk to me about anything, DM me, okay? Like, this meetup is like, I used to say it's like 10% code. We're like 5% code, okay? This is all about the human aspect of being a programmer, and it happens to be Python. And I love Python because it is a program for human, like it's a language for human beings. So Reed, that's awesome. Great New Year's resolution. Alex, welcome to the group.
Hi everyone, I'm Alex. I just finished my master's in software development at the U. And I took my first development job. My background's in accounting, but I switched to programming. And I took a job at Progression as a Python developer. So I'm excited about that. And I'll be working alongside the data scientist team. So I just want to learn as much as I can and grow in that way. As far as a New Year's resolution, I'm trying to kick DoorDash.
Nice.
In 2020, I definitely use DoorDash a lot, and I'm trying to get out of that habit.
So I had to ask, are you like gonna still get takeout and like call the restaurant directly? Or is like the New Year's goal to get rid of the middleman, or is it just?
I think it'll start as a middleman, but the goal is to like. Oh, and yeah, Tom. I don't know if that's the Tom Madsen I know from growing up, but I am from Cedar Hills. I'm living in Orem now, but I don't see Tom on there. Yeah. Oh, sorry, I got a private message. I guess that was private.
Oh.
Sorry about that. Nobody knows what I'm talking about, but it's nice to meet all of you.
Yeah, you as well, Alex. I advise getting like an air fryer or something. Just my 2 cents, because definitely kicking up the culinary skills this year. We'll move on. Trevor.
Hey guys, I actually just finished a data science schooling, boot camp, whatever you want to call it, called Lambda School, and I'm currently in my progression to the job search. I obviously use Python a lot for data science and data engineering, and finding my way in this new world for me, as 8 or 10 months ago, programming was completely foreign to me. So I'm dipping my toes in every avenue possible to try and get more accustomed to everything about it and learning what I need to know during my job search. And then my New Year's resolution is along those self-care guidelines, I guess, and I'm going to try to journal every night. Find it helps me kind of relax and total everything up and maybe make goals for the new day. So excited to be here.
It's an excellent goal, Trevor. And welcome to the world of programming. It turns out it's just like words, and you use another word to make that word do stuff. And then it turns out to be kind of awesome, right? Like, yeah. So welcome. Awesome New Year's resolution. Dandy. Oh, caught you mid-sip. Sorry about that.
Yep. So you hit me right when I was drinking. So my name's Dandy Taylor. I work for Health Catalyst as an analytics director, which is really more of a glorified project manager. But I just finished up a master's program here last spring in computer science. And so I'm just trying to get back into the community. I sort of ducked out of the community for a while I was doing that. So New Year's resolution is probably to get a little bit healthier and lose some weight. So
I recommend the Ring Fit for that. Just saying, like body weight. Oh man, love it. That's me though. I don't know. It worked for me because sports is like fun, but I like to have like a video game going on at the same time. Just lovely.
I'll have to try it out.
Yeah. And then, yeah, Health Catalyst, great place to work. I'm very biased because that's where my partner.
That's what I've heard.
Yeah. I was gonna say, is that where Lexi works?
Yep.
I know Lexi.
Oh, excellent. Well, I'll say hi.
All right. And if you need help with Mandarin, let me know because I speak Mandarin as well.
Oh, sweet. Dude,
that's actually how I know Lexi, because we used to talk to each other all the time.
Oh man. Okay. So like once everybody's vaxxed up, you're coming over and we're having hot pot, Andy.
Oh, hot pot's awesome.
Exactly. All right. Well, welcome to the group. I'm glad to have you. Christina. Or is it Christina?
Yes. Yeah, my name's Christina Bailey. I got a degree in statistics back when people still use SAS. And my New Year's resolution this year, I fell into BI and ETL development. And my New Year's resolution this year is to get off my butt and finally learn Python so that I can go the data engineer route.
Well, I think you're in the right place. I mean, I'm a little biased, but it's awesome to have you. For Python, this is definitely a great first step. And make sure you sign up on the Slack. You'll get a lot more asynchronous help. I think people are more than happy to do mentorship. Yeah, awesome. And you did stats and SAS. Was that like on the mainframe, right? You'd have to be at an IBM terminal or?
I've done it on a mainframe and a PC environment.
Nice. Back in the day when people are like, oh, it's a microcomputer. Now everything's a microcomputer. But that's cool. Awesome. Well, welcome to the group. We're happy to have you. Python is like the Commodore 64 of this. I don't know. I've been looking at a lot of retro computing. I'm about to get in a huge tangent, but yeah, awesome. Awesome to have you. Colin.
Hey, my name's Colin Bledsoe. Fighting a little bit of a cold. I don't think it's coronavirus, but I'm sorry, that's why I sound funny. I work as a process engineer at Hexcel. So I'm not a developer, I'm a chemical engineer, but I love automating things. So I wanted to get involved in the Python community, found this on the meetup page, so hoping to learn from you guys. And my New Year's resolution is I'm starting a blog. So I have a lot of crazy ideas and I never finish them. So I'm hoping that the blog will help me build some accountability to finish some projects.
Very nice. But you shouldn't have told us about the blog, right? Because now it won't get done.
Yeah.
No, that's an awesome goal. Definitely link it to us when you want to show it off. That's what our Slack's for. So cool. Awesome to have you.
Thanks.
Sweet. I think I'm just going to skip Johnny. He's just sitting there with his golf stuff. No, go for it, Johnny.
Cool. I'm up. What's going on, everybody? I'm Johnny. I'm a software engineer at Invite with Faris. I think has Andy been to one of these too, Faris? I think he mentioned he has.
You're the first in our group, so.
Okay, all right. I'll get Andy here soon. But my New Year's resolution is to actually attend more meetups and conferences. So excited to be here. We'll see how that goes with COVID still going strong here. So all this work from home, I just wanted to attend more of these. So definitely excited to be here.
Yeah, Johnny went to the online Kubernetes conference, and now like everything in his house is just deployed with Helm, and that's a very inside joke. I don't know if everybody got it, but basically I was just saying that he automated his house using Kubernetes now because he went there.
Keep annoying Faris with all these Kubernetes blogs and everything. So
hey, let's go to PyCon together. I mean, it's all virtual. I'm definitely down on making like a Slack channel where we could discuss it. It's that easy this year. And then Johnny, no excuse next year, huh? To go to PyCon, because I don't know if everybody's aware, but it will be in Salt Lake City next year and the year after. So that's some excellent news. Awesome.
Where are you from, Johnny? Are you from Utah or?
San Francisco.
Johnny asked me what SLCPython
nice.
So he's definitely not a local.
Very cool.
SF represent and
Micah.
Okay.
Hi. Sorry, I'm having some video problems. That's why you're not seeing me. And there's also a piano in the background, so hopefully you can hear me. Yeah, I'm happy to be here. I just started as an intern for Eternity Data with Joe. So that's how I got pulled into this. But I'm excited to learn more about this space. My background is initially in UX UI design. I have my degree in that from the University of Washington, and then kind of started moving into software development for about a year and a half, creeping towards data. Yeah, so I'm excited to be here. I think my New Year's resolution is to do more domestic travel and road trips.
Nice. That's a good one.
Yeah.
So much to explore. And you're from Utah?
I'm from Utah. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a lot just like in Stones.
I know.
Here, it's just lovely.
I know. You need to take advantage of it.
Yeah. Excellent. And that's a lot of new people we have today, and a couple out-of-staters, at least one I know of. So that's cool. That's been one of the like silver linings of this. So. And I'm stalling for time as I figure out where we are in the agenda. Okay, this is fun. There's just so many here that I left from last time. So this is the part of the meetup where we talk about who's hiring and who's looking. If you know of somebody, especially in the Utah area, but just generally looking for Python jobs, we can link it up here. I can add it if it's not already here. And then if there's one from last month that's still here that I need to remove, just let me know. So that's the nice thing about making this a living document. Invite is the one I'll shout out for. Johnny, this is definitely where I get all my Invite leads, just saying. But no, I'm just kidding. But yeah.
Great way to do it.
I love working at Invite. I mean, it is actually my dream job. I work with really interesting people. I always feel like the dumbest person on the Zoom call. And that's great, because that means there's something I get to learn, even though I'm a senior developer. So Johnny's a great person to work with as well. So if you happen to end up in our team, that would be sweet. Tech Systems is somebody to reach out to. Kate specifically, if you're looking for hiring opportunities, anything fun that you've spotted. And Kate usually does a magic thing where she like queries her like AI of jobs, and it's like, here are all the
Yeah, well, yeah, it's fun. You know, I can just hop in my system, and I will say, you know, like I've been mentioning, COVID has given us the kind of concept of working remote now is okay for all these companies that used to be like, no way, no remote. So that is one positive effect from COVID on the industry, is now I can look all over the country for cool stuff. I did actually have, just as of yesterday, I just happened to be talking to a hiring manager on a reference for one of his employees, and he said, you know, I've got 2 Python developer positions that I need to fill immediately. So we're finalizing the agreement, because just talked to him yesterday, but I should have full details on those soon. I do know essentially he's looking for a mid-level person. They need to have at least 2 to 3 years of professional experience with Python. So it's not super extensive, but you do have to have that, on-the-job Python experience. So if anyone's interested in that, it sounds like a really cool company. The guy I talked to is just cool, charismatic, super fun leader. So it seems like he's great to work with.
Excellent. Thanks, Kate. The other two, there's a couple links right here. The PyCon job 2020 board was posted online. It's usually an in-person event, but those are, I think they're not all filled yet, and they were updating it, but I think with the 2021 announcement, they're going to start shifting over where they're posting the most recent jobs. Python Jobs HQ has been a great resource for a couple people actually. In December, were talking to me about this in Slack, and that's, I mean, if you can get hired in December, I got hired in December, so I shouldn't talk, but if you can get hired in Q4, that's hard. So it's a good signal to me. Verdigris, is this still up for grabs, Dylan? Or should we remove it?
Yes, that position is still open. So we're looking for a senior machine learning engineer, operations, helping deploy machine learning models. You'll get to work with me. So if that sort of stuff interests you, then there's a link there. We're also going to probably have a full stack position this quarter. The details of that are being finalized. So hopefully next meetup, I'll be able to announce that one.
What does Verdigris do, Dylan?
Verdigris does smart building energy efficiency. So we help buildings be more energy efficient, helping to fight climate change. We produce an energy sensor and then add software on top of that to help understand energy and reduce the overall usage.
Excellent. So energy, Internet of Things. Let's see. Recursion, anybody can speak for this? We typically don't post unless there's somebody who can speak to a particular link. Any recursion people? Going once, going twice. Well, check it out on their site. Recursion's doing cool stuff. Johnny, just so you know, these guys are doing tailored medicine for genetic diseases. So there's our local claim to fame that's not Myriad Genetics. So boom. Branded Entertainment Network, ML, anybody can speak to this?
Yeah, I can speak to that one. That's actually on my team. I think maybe Joe threw it up here, so I think I let him know about it a while ago. But we are basically hiring for data engineers, so people that are building a data platform for data scientists to use. Local, Provo, good people. I like to say we have the best data science team in Utah, but people might argue with me on that. But we're pretty good. We've started pretty recently, so it's a lot of greenfield stuff that you don't have a lot of like legacy code to deal with. So it's a fun time.
Nice. Not having legacy code, what's that like? Man.
Yeah.
Excellent. Let's see. And then Sorensen Communications looks like this was just added.
Yeah, I just added that one. So Sorensen Communications, we're doing some work with them, and they're looking for, actually it's a senior data engineer. I posted the link in the chat here. So they're looking for somebody who can help them basically migrate some data to a cloud data warehouse and a bunch of related stuff there. So if you're into data warehousing, BI, that kind of stuff, then check it out.
I have some more details on the position, the full stack engineer position that Verdigris is going to have. So we're looking for full stack, a lot of like RESTful interfaces. We're working in AWS, but also working on being cloud agnostic. So the best like Terraform, Kubernetes, all of those fun new tools you'd get to work with. We need 3 years kind of experience working in Python, but also in JavaScript and Node. So that's kind of the full stack, having experience with the cloud as well. So if that describes you, the job posting is going to be up in a few days, but feel free to ping me if you want to learn more.
Thank you so much for that, Dylan. Any others in the in Utah or just generally looking for remote Python positions? Going once, going twice. Okay, and that's what we got. Let's see. So we also got a part here. This is the part where if you are at this group right now and you're looking for a gig, this is where you can raise your hand and market yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself. Like, why would somebody want to hire you? And then, like, it's a safe space. Don't worry. If somebody has like pointers for you on what you need to be learning, they'll DM you. If you want to, if you yourself are looking for any kind of interviewing, coaching, or mentoring, or anything like that, feel free to hit up anybody on the group. Specifically, you can DM me on our Meetup Slack. It looks like I saw somebody like clap their hands, but I didn't see somebody raise their hands. It's easier if you hit the raise hand, and I don't know where the button is for that. There we go. Okay, because then I can, yes. Okay, Trevor, we'll start with you. You are looking, and please, if you would, if you have contact details, put them in this Etherpad, and that makes life a whole lot easier.
Cool.
But yeah, we'll start with you, Trevor.
Yeah, so I'll absolutely drop my contact info in the who's looking section, but I kind of gave myself a little bit of an intro before by just finishing my schooling and pretty new to the arena of data science. But I will say my ability, my only lack of ability is my lack of experience, I'll say. I still have some things I need to learn, but I do well in front of people, like when the job applications talk about the ability to present or talk to stakeholders. I'm pretty comfortable there. But I'm pretty much trying to navigate my way through the tracks of data engineering and data science, and then even some data analyst roles. So I think what I'm looking for are whole company missions that interest me. So the Verdigris that Dylan works for, unfortunately it's a senior role, but I originally went to school for environment and sustainability. So that my original degree, I'll call it, was started in that. And then a lot of different things in the health and wellness sector really interest me. So I find there's a lot of opportunity there, but it's finding the right opportunity, and I'm looking for the business to essentially help me learn, I guess. I know that's not an ideal role, but I'm really excited to get into this world and doing everything I can to set myself up for it.
Excellent. And I will give you some unsolicited advice right now. Don't discount yourself right away. Let them do that. If the Verdigris role looks interesting and it says senior on it, freaking apply anyway. The worst they can do is just say, sorry, you don't have enough years yet. But if you have the other stuff, I'm sure that there's somebody HR would be like, oh, wait, he has a background in this. And I can speak it in Vitae. We've had a number of people who started in lab and were like, hey, Python's cool. And now, now they're working on the computational genetics side of things. And I look up to them more than somebody who just codes, right? Like including myself, right? So that's my unsolicited advice to you. So
I won't say it's the first time I've heard it, because my wife is fist pumping in the background listening to you say those things, because this is the encouragement she gives me as well. So I appreciate hearing it from another.
That's why we're here, Trevor. That's what we're here for. So
awesome.
Welcome. Well, thank you. Adam, let's talk about you. What do you got? Adam, you have your hand raised, and but I think you're muted. Maybe we can come back. Going once, going twice. Okay, I'm gonna keep your hand raised, and I'll go on to Michael.
Hey everyone, I'm Michael. I'm working on a PhD in biomedical engineering right now. Hoping to wrap up sometime this year. Kind of depends a little bit on COVID and how research goes in the next months. But my experience with Python, so biggest project right now is building a portable neural interface processor system. Basically, the research I'm doing is with like prosthetic arms that you can move with your thoughts.
That's so cool. Like the Cyberdean stuff, like that, or never mind.
Yeah, the Luke arm stuff. I don't know if you've seen.
Okay.
Yeah, so basically like taking information coming from the brain through the muscles and stuff and trying to like decode movement intent from that. And then also like stimulating the nerve to actually send like a sense of touch back to the user. So basically taking like what's been on a big rack system before and trying to port that all onto a portable Linux system and run it on there. So it's been a huge Python learning experience and really fun. So yeah, I mean, right now, kind of looking for potentially like an intern for the summer that could just turn into a full-time position in the fall. Trying to get all my research done this spring, but don't know exactly how well that will go. So, yeah.
Well, I mean, so far, I mean, I'd hire you if I had money. I'd just be like, yes, I want 3 arms now. But
yeah. Well, thanks.
I do have one more note on that. And for the rest of the community, especially people coming from academia, I'll put a link in that channel. But there will be a science fair, and it is a yearly science fair that they have for the state, University of Utah for the high schoolers here. But they're always looking for judges. It's a great opportunity to just network and get active, but also to give back a little bit because yeah, especially PhD folks like yourself, like there's some of those kids I don't know. I saw one who did she did some deep learning analysis on mice that have had, I'm trying to remember what she had cut out on the mice, but it was crazy. It was like, you're a senior in high school and you probably are closer to a Nobel Prize than anybody I know. So. But yeah, I will post a link about that stuff. Awesome, Michael, welcome to the group. Let's see, Michael Lane.
Hey, I'm Michael. I actually live in Atlanta. I saw this group on Meetup and I was interested in the topic. Right now, I intern for the government, but I'm trying to work on getting my master's in data analytics. And I'm right now studying up because I know I came from a non-traditional role in like mathematics, so I don't have a lot of coding experience. So I'm just looking for anything dealing with, like right now I deal with judicial data and building building statistics to figure out if court cases are fair or not based on the 6th Amendment. And so I'm looking, I guess, for any work in that kind of space.
There is, I'll try to find the link, but there have been some justice and code initiatives lately. And I think there's going to be a bit more of that this year, but TV, that's awesome. Welcome to the group, Mike. East Coast, we'll try not to keep you up too late.
Yeah. And any advice on algorithms and just the basics of coding? What's stopping me on my master's is cost, and mostly because I was never traditionally taught, because when I went to school, they just didn't have those opportunities that they had for people these days.
Yeah, well, yeah, let anybody know on the Slack, and people are more than willing to help out here. So welcome to the group.
Thanks.
Wim, RM Carodine?
Yeah, Wim Karoon. So I'm currently working at the Center for High Performance Computing at the University of Utah for 11 years already. And I'm trying to change my career. So I'm currently also working on a master's in mathematical statistics, and I'm interested in data science. I have a lot of experience in Python, also R, C++, Fortran, C, SQL. I've also worked quite significantly on the cloud, like GCP, Azure, AWS. and also high performance computing like MPI, OpenMP, and stuff like that, but GPUs. But that's kind of a little bit a different field. Right?
Excellent. And it's great to have you. High performance computing at the U, is that, I'm trying to remember, is it the same building that was part of ARPANET? I always forget.
I came a long time ago to the meetups. I'm on the 4th floor actually.
Okay.
I was giving the talks in the building on Python.
Oh, excellent.
And also I've done several talks nationally on NumPy and part of SciPy.
So you're our next speaker, right? That's what you're saying.
Pardon?
Would you like to be our next speaker? And that's what you're saying. It sounds like you're standing up to do that. I jest. I'm just joking.
Maybe
but
in the future.
We're more than happy to have you as a speaker as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, welcome to the group.
Thanks.
We're honored to have you. Christina.
Hi, I'm Christina Bailey, BI and ETL developer. I'm sort of looking for a position that will, let me do those things and then grow into more of a data engineer, data science role.
Excellent. Doing like 10 different things at once here. Is there anything specific, like any kind of domain that you're wanting to apply the data science to?
Not particularly. I mean, one nice thing about reporting is you get a lot of domain knowledge very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Unavoidable if you're involved in operations and reporting.
Excellent. Well, I think people who are looking for that kind of I don't know the word for being dynamic. I'm like, my thesaurus in my brain is broken today, but being able to be dynamic and like agile and work for those. That's awesome.
Yeah. And the thing about BI development is if you're doing your job right, you're coding yourself out of a job.
Yeah, exactly. Excellent. Napinye?
Yeah, I'm Napinai.
Napinai.
Actually, I didn't realize that my son had changed my name in the Zoom as Aditya. I'm Napinai.
Oh.
And just before the meeting, my internet died, and then I'm just managing with my phone. So if the line is not clear, that will be the reason. Sorry about that. I have been in IT for quite some time. I started my, after completing my master's in computer applications, I started my career in mainframes. I had done a lot of development in that. I had my own team in mainframes, and then I have done a lot of testing. And I'm trying to change my line now. So I would like to move on to data science. And then I did a course from University of Utah. And then during the course, I did a lot of projects in R. So using the supervised learning with linear regression, logistic regression, and a lot of other stuff like SVM, and even a small project on natural language processing. And then I would like to move on to data science now. So, and I have done a course on Python also in Udemy.
Well, Python's the second best language for all of it, so you're in the right place. Awesome. Well, welcome to the group. Feel free, everybody who's gone so far, please post your details in the Etherpad, or feel free. We also have a jobs channel in the Slack. Yeah, I'm gonna call on Adam one more time. I'm not sure if that your hand's still raised, so giving you a chance if you can unmute, want to introduce yourself. Also feel free, if you're on the call, don't feel like talking, totally get it. I can't read the Zoom chat right now, so I don't know if somebody's chatting in Zoom, I can't read that, so cool. But yeah, feel free to use the Etherpad to post your contact details as well. All right, going once, going twice. All right.
Adam said he posted his information in chat. I'm not sure. Does he not have a mic?
Do you just go by Adam, or do you have a full name? Or how would people reach out to you if you're looking for work?
I'm reviewing the chat here. Okay.
Okay then.
I think, Adam, feel free to use the jobs channel. Feel free to DM me. We can chat if you're looking for something. Yeah. I am going to move on real quick. Okay, we're going to get through this part really quick because I want to give us a 5-minute interval to do a survey. Yes, everybody loves surveys. So the latest community Python news is Python 3.9. Yeah, which is pretty sweet. There was also, we did a thing about GPT-3, and there's a really sweet demo about that was released today that I was looking at, but I'll just link that. It's not huge community news, but is there anything else that I'm missing, like Python or like randomly? No? If anybody used to watch Computer Chronicles, this is like bring your own random access file. And if you haven't watched Computer Chronicles, I highly recommend Computer Chronicles for some cozy like viewing. Totally G-rated PBS show about computing in the 1980s, and it's wonderful. Okay, so we have a survey over here. Feel free to click on this link. I'm going to go ahead and right now I will put it in our meetup Slack. And that's right here.
Yeah, this survey was designed by myself, Faris, and Joe. We really want to get people's input on how the meetup's meeting your needs, how like what we can do going forward. Even if you're brand new, go ahead and fill it out. There's a question that just kind of asks how often you attend, and so just put first time, and it'd be great to know what brings you to this meetup, what things you find valuable, and then we can bring you more of that content. We can add events and things that would help each of you in your endeavors and help us as a little Python community.
And yeah, it'll help us like know who's starting to attend the meetup, especially with the dynamics changing because of Zoom. I'm really fascinated to know who's outside of Utah. We have a few questions in there. Yeah, so please feel free to do that. We will reconvene at 6:30 Mountain Standard Time on January 6, 2021. Fun fact, if you don't get the full date time in your Python object, then you're going to have a bad time when you're starting to make comparisons later. So, and see you in 5 minutes.
Hi, this is Shankar. I have a quick question for you.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Can I download the Anaconda to install the Python 3.9? Is there any website do you have any recommendation for that? I'm trying to download that one.
Dylan would be the best person to ask about this.
I mean, for Anaconda, I just go through their website. And if they don't have a 3.9, it's probably just, it's 3.9 is still new, and Anaconda is a little bit behind because they do a lot of validating on all of their packages that they provide. So it might just not be available for a little bit. I wouldn't imagine long, but.
Yeah, I just found Anaconda package Python 3.9.1. I'm not sure about this. This is the Python licensed Python 2.0. Let me try and see. Anyway.
I don't know. I tried. I looked into Miniconda yesterday, or maybe it was the day before, and there was a Miniconda installation for Python 3.9, but it wasn't the one that was on the main page. You had to go into the release history and find it.
Okay. Yeah, I just found this one. Yeah, this is a website I found, and let me try and see if it works. Anyway, thank you. I just posted the website for Anaconda Python download page. The latest is 3.8. Anyway, thank you very much.
Is the rank the results section supposed to be like one answer per rank?
Yeah, if you can put one answer per row.
Okay.
Yeah.
One
It'll force you could put multiples. I allowed that just so that it wasn't quite so strict.
Okay. Right on.
Yeah.
No, 1 minute warning.
I'm really excited to get into all this data. Thanks everyone for filling it out. And we'll be presenting results so that you can see as well, and making changes based on what we learned going forward. We've never had this kind of information feedback before. We've kind of just had a little bit anecdotal, and so being able to get your feedback is so awesome.
Yeah, I mean, this group sort of has evolved from, I think, a random web developer meetup into like a data meetup, basically. So
to be fair, we were a web developer meetup by title for one meetup. The very first meetup, this is our Triviata, was called the Python Web Development Meetup. And then everybody's like, just make it the Python meetup. So
cool. Tyler.
Yes.
Folkman, are you ready?
I'm ready. Awesome. Are you ready?
Are you ready to rumble? Okay, let's do this.
Cool. Let me see if I can successfully share my screen.
Joe, would you like to introduce our speaker?
You talking to me or?
Yeah, Joe Reese,
yeah.
Co-organizer. Would you like to introduce our speaker at our?
Yeah. So tonight we have Tyler Folkman. He is a data scientist, thought leader. We strangely, I think we met on LinkedIn of all places. and I like this content a lot. He was posting a lot of, I would say, they were interesting data science posts. They weren't your typical ones like become a data scientist because it's awesome. It's like he's more of I think taking a contrarian viewpoint, sort of like myself in a lot of ways. Like here's some, data science is awesome. Here's some things you should look out for. And yeah, I felt like he had a lot of great things to say. And so, we developed a good relationship since. He's been releasing some really good content around production machine learning. And I think he has a lot of experience around this title here, which I'll let Tyler get to right now. So Tyler Folkman, welcome.
Thanks, Joe. Yeah, it's good to be here. Thanks for having me. Can people see the slide okay?
With the emoji and everything.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll get into it. I'll say that I generally don't take things too seriously, so hopefully that doesn't offend you.
It's a very serious group, Tyler. Sorry.
I'm pretty open to people cutting in and asking questions or giving comments or disagreeing with me. I think disagreeing with me is probably a logical thing to do. I'm sample size of 1, so whatever I say here doesn't really mean a lot. It just means some things I've seen, and hopefully it's valuable. So yeah, we'll just kind of dig right in. And I tend to speak and then try to leave a decent amount of time for questions, because generally people are trying to get something out of the meetup, and that may not be exactly what I'm talking about, but perhaps I have thoughts on the thing that would be helpful to you if it's not this. So happy to answer questions. Anyways, your next data science project is likely to fail. I think I kind of started talking about this a little bit ago, and I think it's interesting because there's a lot of stats out there about the staggering failure of data science. So I thought I'd kind of dig into that, give some thoughts on why I think that is, and talk about what we can do about it. Let me go backwards. There we go. So agenda. Why can you trust me? So I'll give a little bit more background about who I am, what I've done, or if you should trust me. Why I think you'll probably fail, why that's a problem and what you can do about it, and then some Q&A. So a bit about me, if that helps you believe anything I say here, is I've been doing data science for a while. I currently am at B.E.N, which does product placement, and lead a team of, I think, 14 people now, doing data science, data engineering, product development, trying to really create value using data science, AI, machine learning, whatever you want to call it. Before, I was at Ancestry doing the same thing, leading a team to do, at the point there's all that deep learning, so computer vision, natural language processing on historical records. Before that, I was in grad school, spent a little time at Amazon while I was interning there during my schooling years. And before that, I was doing consulting using SAS. So whoever mentioned SAS before, I've been there. When I learned Python, I realized that SAS was basically a scam and cost a lot of money for not really any clear reason to me. So I've been around. I don't have really a traditional background in the sense I didn't, get a PhD in computer science, but I do have an undergrad in economics and a master's in computer science. And my first job was not in data science; it was in consulting. So I was someone who successfully transitioned into data science, and for some people that's helpful. If you have any questions on that, I kind of went through that. So that's who I am, and that kind of, I think, talks a little bit about why I think some of these things and some of my background. So what's our problem? So the problem is, according to Gartner, which maybe you don't believe them, but I've seen other stats that are similar, is that over 85% of data science projects fail. And that's a really big number. And so I think it's interesting to think about why that is and if it's true. And I actually think it probably is true, or at least at the right order of magnitude. So I want to talk a little bit about why I think data science projects fail often, and then what I think we can do about it. So I think there are 2 types of problems: company level problems and data scientist problems. I think at the end of the day, probably both of these are everyone's problem, but they are somewhat different in their scale and scope. And let me kind of dig in to help you understand why I think that is. So company level problems in my mind, and why data science fails, is there's no data-driven culture. There's a lack of a clear problem to solve. There's no useful data. There's no infrastructure. And on some level, these are data science problems as well. But as a data scientist, it can be hard to really grasp these, especially in smaller companies, and really make any significant change. If you come into a company that has a certain type of culture, it doesn't really want to change, usually the data scientists will leave. Same thing is they can't really find problems to solve that are useful. It's hard for data scientists to affect change, but they are problems, right? And so I consider these company level problems that lead to data science failure. That while as data scientists, they are your problem and hopefully you can help make them better. They tend to live at a level above maybe just the data science organization. And these are just some of the ones that I had seen or have seen and thought about, but I was curious what other people have seen at either their jobs. They can be previous jobs. It doesn't mean the thing you're saying is the job you're currently at, in case your coworkers are on the call, but just things you've seen that you think have been company level problems that have led to data science failure or even heard about.
Yeah, my previous job, I definitely had a challenge with the culture that was like company level difficulty. Like as much as I wanted to do data, if the company didn't understand the value of what was being done, it was very hard to get sales aligned and marketing aligned and even product aligned.
Yeah, I think that's super common, especially for companies looking to get into data-driven analytics. If they haven't done it before, often the culture doesn't fit.
Mm-hmm. There's the ego problem.
There's also like I think if you have a venture-backed company, I think there's a lot of VC-driven development for AI that you can put on pitch decks and sell to investors. So that tends to be, I think, what drives a lot of data culture, particularly for VC-funded startups. That's, I would say, very common. So.
Yeah, for sure.
I mentioned the ego or the highest paid person in the room problem. Sometimes at company level problems, it's kind of a how we do things. This is how we do things. We're not going to change it. You might call that a lack of data-driven culture, or just somebody's ego in the way.
Yeah, definitely. That can be super hard to work around, that type of problem.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that stands out to me, not that I have a lot of work experience in this regard, and I think it's a challenge in general when working between non-technical administrators and a technical product that needs challenges. There's an XKCD comic that there's a manager coming to says that, oh, we want our app to show whether or not the person who took the picture is in a national park. They said, oh, sure, it's a GIS lookup. It'll take me a couple of hours. They said, oh, and we want to check whether the photo has a bird in it. It's like, yeah, that'll take a research team of 5 years. Now, that was before, obviously, deep learning has made that much more accessible to these kind of teams. But I think the challenge is still the same, where you have it for people who don't have technical understanding or even just a sense, anything that people do with computers is magic, and so they figure you can do anything, and they ask for things that are fundamentally not a solvable problem with the current tools that people have, or it just takes resources that they're not willing to give. They're like, well, we've heard of this data science thing, and I think that companies have improved and not being quite so naive before jumping into these sort of projects. But I still think that is something that tends to hold back these kind of projects, is that disconnect of what is actually doable and what it takes to do, and things that just look like magic to non-specialists.
Yeah, definitely. It can be very hard to manage expectations versus reality in that type of scenario. Anything else anyone's seen? So I'll say these types of problems are interesting because in general, I think these are things you should look out for before joining a company. Unless you're joining a company at a level that you feel you have the ability to impact these things and you feel that the management or executive team is looking to make changes. Otherwise, it can be very hard to live as a data scientist with these types of problems if you don't have the ability to make any change. that, that's not to say they're maybe hiring you as the first data scientist. They realize they've got problems and they want you to help change their culture and build the infrastructure and things like that. That's totally fine. But if that's not what they're hiring for, it's useful to ask these types of questions. What's your culture like? What problems do you want to solve? What data do you have to solve them? Is there any infrastructure to get the data? Is anyone using the data? Because it can feel bad to end up in these situations with a lack of power to make change. And usually this is a big way companies lose data science teams, even where you'll see a company put up a lot of money to hire some good people, and then all those good people ended up somewhere else like a year later. This happens in Utah, actually. I've seen a few data science teams kind of exodus from a couple different companies here. And I think a lot of it was company level problems because the data scientists couldn't really make the change. It wasn't so much their problem. They just couldn't make it a livable situation. So I think it's important to realize that data science doesn't always fail because the data scientists, they can be part of these problems, I think, for sure, but these company level problems usually supersede them or are higher level. The next type is maybe more common to people here. These are the data scientist problems, things that can lead to failure, and just some of them that are more within the control of data scientists. Models were just not good enough is actually a real problem, right? The company said we want to predict if people are going to churn. You're like, yeah, churn, that's totally a thing I've seen machine learning do. That seems pretty reasonable. You start looking at the data and you're like, there's nothing here. People are just churning because of randomness. We can't find any correlation. We've been working on this for a year. And for all we understand, people come to your website, buy a thing, and then randomly just start churning. And that could actually happen and that would fail. And that's not really your fault. And that's actually, I would say, not really a problem. That's more of a learning experience. But it is a way that data science projects fail. And if not handled correctly, can be bad. And part of the reasons for that is when projects take too long. If it takes you a year to actually figure out your churn's not going to work, that feels not acceptable. And so executive teams feel bad. They think they made bad investments and expensive hires. And so the data science team gets looked down upon. So this is the second one that I see a lot is projects just take too long and have not enough visibility. If data scientists need 6 months to do anything, that means you basically have 2 shots in the year to make an impact. And because of the thing we just talked about, some things just won't work. 2 shots is not a good idea. You want 20 shots a year, not 2. And so if you don't have the skills or the team or the things set up for you to move quickly, you'll likely fail because at the end of the day, we're just kind of doing science experiments and a lot of them will fail naturally. Third, maybe it's really, really successful, but you just can't get it to production. You can't make it through that last mile to the customer, maybe because it requires an engineering team, maybe because product won't let it in. There's a lot of reasons that this happened, but this is another reason is you have a really nice model that's stuck in a notebook and never sees customers. And that's generally not a good end state for machine learning work because it's not really impacting the business at the end of the day. Fourth that I see, we're bad at setting expectations. We get really excited about solving problems and we go into a hole and we work on these problems. And when we come back out, people are like, what's been going on? And you give an update and maybe it's not what people expected. You're not where they thought you would be. The problem wasn't perfectly solved. And you find yourself in this situation where expectations are not meeting reality. Solve the wrong problem. This happens a lot. Maybe you think you're working on the right problem, but you're optimizing for the wrong metric. So you spend a lot of time building a churn model, and maybe you're optimizing a certain type of churn, and it turns out that's not what they wanted, but no one really thought much about it. You just had some data, had a problem, figured everyone uses cross entropy, so why don't I use cross entropy? And it doesn't really solve the business problem. And then last, which is one that I think people don't think too much about, is too much technical debt. I see this where data scientists don't really have a good system to deploy and maintain their code. And you basically turn into data stewards where you're constantly just having to maintain the things that you have in the world. So you do have some models in production, they're running, but the time it takes you to keep them running, to keep the customers happy, to maintain them, It's just so much that your ability to take bets during the year or to do new things is very low. And so you run back into this problem where you can't do too many projects in the year because most of your time is just maintaining the things you've already done. And I think all of these are to some degree within the data science team's capacity to change. Some of them are harder to change, like getting into production can be hard because it requires many teams coordinating sometimes. But I think data scientists can make these things better, which in some sense makes them better problems to have, but also maybe harder problems to be upfront with because they might be more on your shoulders to fix. But yeah, what else? Has anyone else seen any problems from their work or teams they've worked with or heard about that led to failure?
I'll say something in my experience is just getting enough visibility from your devs. So for example, as a developer and not necessarily a data scientist in previous orgs, I know that sometimes the burden was on me to even add just like a logging statement somewhere to be ingested later, but it wouldn't have been known to me unless, you know, we worked with the data team and the data team was, you know, telling us, hey, like we need to pick up these metrics. You're about to implement something that we want to check at scale. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Handshaking can always cause issues when you're moving stuff around.
Another one I've seen that kind of branches off of solving the wrong problem is quickly changing requirements. The last job, we built this big ETL pipeline to process genomic data, and after every like 2 months or so, we'd have management come to us and say, hey, we don't want it to look like this. We want to do something else with it. And that's very frustrating.
Yeah, requirements are super hard for data problems because generally the people you're working with don't have a good sense of what's possible. It's very different than like building an app. People can kind of visualize what they want their app to do and what it should look like. When you're doing something with data, a lot of times it's hard for people to even know what's possible. And so they have a hard time a lot of times expressing what they want.
Yeah, very true.
One thing I've seen quite a bit too with data scientists, I think especially junior ones really want to make an impact, is what we call resume-driven development. So working towards the you know, the coolest new libraries, working on the hottest new models, whether or not it actually makes an impact or not, that can derail a project quite a bit too. So, and especially when you have like a manager-driven, resume-driven development, because they want to like get the underlings to do cool stuff so that person can get a cool job at like Facebook or something, then yeah, it gets a bit fun.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think a real pro tip is always start simple with machine learning. Like there's literally never a good time to not start with a simple model. No matter what your heart tells you, it's always a bad idea to start complicated. And deep learning is not necessarily complicated. Sometimes people think deep learning. If you're doing image processing, you should start with deep learning. That doesn't mean it's complicated. You maybe shouldn't start with the NeurIPS 2020 paper and implement it from scratch for your first go.
But if you're doing like classification on structured data though, I would, yeah, definitely don't jump to deep learning as your first option.
Right.
Well, also deep learning won't give you, like, if you work for the government, I'm going to level with you guys. If you work for the government, you should probably never implement a deep learning algorithm unless it's a absolute last resort, because you're always going to have an ethical question where you have to ethically justify what your model is doing. And deep learning, I've been trying to take classes to understand it better. It seems like it skips certain steps statistically by using kernels or like approximations basically, but really statistically accurate approximations. So then you're explaining a lot of statistical stuff and a lot of this technical stuff to a really non-technical audience. Well, XGBoost, on the other hand, you have a plot. You can say this variable is the most important, you know?
I'm glad that there's people like you who are like,
a lot of it has to do with how can you present the algorithm in layman's terms, you know?
I'm starting to see some advances with deep learning and explainability, but I would say it's still and people are doing this in production, but I think it's still pretty early days in explainable deep learning. So, but Tyler can talk about this as well. So.
Yeah, I think that's a really solid point you make, Michael. And I think explainable deep learning is at the point right now that it's kind of like reading the tea leaves. Like, look at the weights of these nodes. Based on these weights, we infer this, but doesn't really mean that that's what that means. We're just kind of assuming that's what that means. And it's getting better, but there's not really anything that says the way we explain deep learning is causal in any sense. Causal explainable deep learning is a different field that's kind of, I think, pretty nascent, but some things people are thinking about. So yeah, it's definitely hard, and that's a good part too about the expectations. Is a lot of times people don't think about the fairness and bias expectation until you get a lawsuit. And for different companies, that's a lot less likely, but the government, that's likely, I imagine, or people working in healthcare. So it's worth thinking about expectations that aren't just metric driven, but are, is our thing biased? Is it fair? Is it treating people the way we expect it to treat people? And that's actually really hard. A lot of smart people have actually built models that are quite biased, not because they meant to, but because the data was biased and they didn't take steps to try to deal with that. And even when you try to take steps to deal with that, you're a person interjecting your own biases on the process, which is, it's just an interesting problem. Anything else? Any other things people have seen that have caused failure?
I don't know if somebody mentioned this. I do remember seeing an AWS bill once and wondering if I should get my resume ready, because like there was just hemorrhaging amounts of cash just throwing computing resources at something that maybe didn't need all these computing resources. But again, maybe that has to do with the opaqueness of some of these endeavors, right? Maybe it's not a particular notebook that's going to yield any results, and there's going to be a null hypothesis, but that's still enough of a data point. So, but I have seen some scary AWS bills as of late.
Yeah, I think that's super fair. I think one of the things I always look for when I'm interviewing companies is, do you realize what this is going to cost you? Not just in salaries, but in computing, especially if you're not doing this. If it's just, if you're like, we're going to get into data science and data, you have this new big bill from AWS that you never had before, and that might not have been budgeted for, and you need it, like you need compute. You have to spend that money somewhere. Maybe you don't have to spend as much, but it's going to cost you money to run these things and to store data and to access it. And a lot of companies don't realize that.
I mean, on that note too, like, what are your thoughts around companies starting out trying to look at AutoML or pre-trained models as a starting point versus rolling their own?
I think pre-trained models are great. I think it's really awesome that companies will share that when they do, because some of these pre-trained models are literally $1 million models. If you go look at what it took to compute that on the data they computed it on, it was actually millions of dollars if you don't own all that hardware, which they do. So like, but if you were to run that on AWS yourself, it would be extremely expensive. AutoML, I'm not a big fan of. I think it's okay for companies trying to dabble. But and someone should correct me if they've seen this, there's never literally been a time in my life where I'm like, random forest isn't working. Oh my goodness, SVM, you're 10 times better. Like, you'll definitely eke out like percentages of better improvement through AutoML. And that's not to say that you shouldn't do it, but the cost of some of these AutoML platforms that are going around right now just seem absurd to me for the value that I think they bring. Where you could just roll your like own teapot or auto scikit-learn if you have any Python skills. That's going to get you most of the way there anyways. But if you're at Google scale, it makes more sense. A 1% improvement at Google scale is a big deal. Most companies though aren't at that scale where it's worth it, in my opinion.
I guess finding something orthogonal to the ROI, if that makes sense. Like, if you have a big question where 1% would actually be a lot of money, then yeah, you are orthogonally at a scale where, yeah.
Right. Yeah, and I think, yeah, that's where, if 1% does mean a lot to you, it's worth spending the money on that. Which for some companies, that's true. It's usually companies that have a huge scale. Like Google search getting 1% better is probably really, really valuable. So unfortunately, they will share some of their research years after the fact with the rest of us. Anything else anyone wants to bring up? Failures?
I just like to highlight someone Faris said, evidence-based policy has been lacking of late. Yeah, that's why I want to find a job in legal data. Because when you go sometimes to a problem and you realize it's that big of a problem, you also realize that maybe you're the only one who's willing to do it, you know? And so sometimes I think in a job, these problems will exist, at least from my internship, but you have to face them head on because you might be the only one willing to face them. And so you have to kind of pick and choose what problem you're best at doing. Would you say that, Tyler, or I'm not sure if I'm off base?
Yeah, I think if I understood correctly, for sure. I think interesting thing about some of these problems we were just talking about, like around fairness and biases, the company might not actually care when they should, which is a different type of problem, which I think is kind of what you're saying is it's good to work at a company that cares about these things and will invest the time to make them better. Like AI ethicist is actually a growing role right now. And I'm sure many of you have seen some of Google's issues in that space, but more and more companies are thinking about a role that's just more along the lines of like, are we doing AI in a responsible, sustainable manner? Which, yeah, I think is important. Anyone want to argue that the 85% number is just way off, that way less data science projects fail? I'm just curious. I think the 85% problem is probably not exactly right, but anyone want to argue it's way wrong?
Well, it's an interesting stat because the Gartner report, at least as far as I read it, was a projection of data science projects that would fail by, I think it was like 2024 or something, or some date, whatever you want to make up, right? It's Gartner, yeah. They make shit up anyway, so whatever. Yeah. So I thought that was interesting, but you know, I mean, we deal with a lot of companies. We work with a lot of companies in a lot of different spaces in data, and I would say anecdotally correct, with a caveat that applies to a lot of legacy companies. And by legacy companies, I mean established companies that may not have been data or AI first. If you're data and AI native from day one, I would say it's sort of it's a given that you're going to be successful at AI because that's part of your product. Retrofitting this into older processes is where I see a lot of the failures. Eventually successes, but successes are built upon quite a bit of failures, right? So you may have 85 failures and then hit your 86 and start succeeding. So, but it's never an overnight success with established companies. I would say it's quite a long journey because there's a lot of maturity that has to happen. It's not just getting up to speed with machine learning. I mean, I think that's the least of your worries, honestly. It's building the right infrastructure, getting the right data quality, understanding what you're trying to do. Those are all like key elements, and you're battling that against the, as Dylan pointed out, the highest paid person's opinion, right? The hippo and other goals that you're trying to compete with. Boards want you to become AI first, and we want to be a machine learning company and all this other stuff. And so that's a driving mantra, but at the same time, to get there is it's a much more complicated story. So you can see where the 85% I think applies to that group of companies in particular. So
yeah, that makes sense to me.
I will my only pedantic comment, and I haven't read the study, will be what is defined as failure. If you're in a good organization, failures usually have a good write-up with them. Like one org I worked at did pre-postmortems, that was it. So before you implement a big project, you kind of talk about what would happen if we failed, what would failure look like? And you can learn a lot from failure if you're in a safe environment to do so. And again, I could see 85% of projects failing in an unsafe environment to do so. So I haven't seen the study, but perhaps that would be another approach to avoiding said failure.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think too that I don't really buy the study was anything special. I just think it's a good number because it's high. So I have no reason to believe that's the right number, but I do think data science projects definitely do fail. But I do think it's an interesting question of whether that's a problem. Which is
Tyler, there's a picture on XKCD that proves your point. But
add it to the Slack, Mike. Yeah, we'll let Tyler keep going on his cadence.
No, I mean, I think your comment was a good flow into like my next, which is like, so what? Like, is this just okay? Like, maybe this is the world we live in, and we learn from our failures and we get better. I think it's interesting. I think for a lot of companies, I mean, there are businesses built around failure. I think angel investing is one of them. You invest in tons of things at an early stage, and 95% of them probably fail. And as long as you got the Airbnb of that decade, you're okay, right? Like, and so maybe this is fine. I think it's a bit of both sides. I think failure is important, and it's in how companies are going to learn to figure these things out. And failure is part of the process, I think, for anything. That's not a data science thing. I think as you tackle ambitious goals and try to do things that no one else is doing, whatever your product is, you'll be up against things that are new and novel for you, and you'll fail and you'll learn and you'll grow. And I think it's worth noting that that's important for people looking to join companies, that they try to get a sense of that, because that, I think, is what's going to help you be successful at a company's data scientist, is that culture of failure is part of our process. Because failure, I think, will always be part of the data science process. If for no other reason than some models just don't work. Just the thing you're trying to solve is not going to be solvable right now in the way you want it to be solvable. And so it's important that you can take that and learn from it and be okay with that and get better. But I do think there probably is a bit of this, like, this is probably not okay. We probably have some issues that we can make better. Because we are a nascent field. I think a lot of people are like, well, data science is just statistics. And I think there's a lot of truth in that a lot of things we do have been around for a long time. But things like the scale of data companies are trying to process at the size, there are companies that have petabytes of data coming in that have like 10 engineers trying to manage it and build machine learning on top of it. And that's a new problem for a lot of companies, trying to do statistics, computer science at that scale of data in potentially real time with the customer on the other end. And so I think while some of the techniques or maybe even a lot of the math we're doing is not necessarily new, the things we're trying to do with products certainly are. Things like Alexa, Siri did not exist before. These are new things we're trying to learn how to kind of wrangle and get into production systems that customers can joyfully interact with, right? We've seen, I think, chatbots go through this. In some sense, they've gotten better, but early on, they were pretty bad because no one had done that before. Not because the idea of chatbots is quite old, but the idea of a chatbot actually being good and helping you when you have an issue with your credit card is quite new, and companies are figuring that out. So what can you do? Be better is one thing, right? Be a better data scientist, but I think more precisely, we need to find a way to improve as data scientists our ability to iterate, get feedback, and ensure we're solving real business problems. My hypothesis here is that failure is part of the process, but failure is okay if done quickly. Failure is not okay if you don't learn from it and it takes a long time. If your failure takes a year, even if you have a really great retrospective at the end of it, no one's going to be happy with that. Like, it doesn't matter how good your process is to deal with that failure and that learning, unless you're tackling like a crazy big project. Most failure needs to happen much more quickly. And I think data scientists can do a lot to make that happen. I think one of the issues that we run into is schools and universities are quite good at teaching and modeling, machine learning, statistics, algorithms, but that's like one small piece of being a data scientist right now. I think part of that will change over time as the role develops, but right now, in a lot of ways, the easy part is the modeling. In a lot of ways, everything else that's hard. And so my suggestion to all of us is become a unicorn. And this is, I think, a fairly controversial thing to say, but I'll back it up a little bit in some following slides. I think this current status of data science is in a state where most companies don't know what they're doing. And thus they need someone that can do many things. And I think the reason people push back on the unicorn thing is they're like, it's not possible. No one can know all these things. That's just ridiculous. And I tend to agree with that. You cannot be an expert coder, DevOps cloud, product manager, deployment specialist, testing, stats. But I do think you can develop skills in these areas that kind of follow this like 20% of the effort get you 80% of the way type of rule, where you can put in a little bit of time into getting breadth that allows you to help companies avoid the obvious failures and pitfalls, and your team as well, whatever team you're working on. Because I think data scientists need a breadth of skills because most companies don't know what they're doing. They don't know. If you're lucky enough to work in one that's been doing it for a while, then you maybe don't need to be this person. But many of you here might have been the first data hire, whether that's science or engineering, and you start to realize there's a lot of fringe things that just don't smell right to you, that if you have some understanding of those things, you can steer a company a little bit better. And while I'm not saying you need to become a master of everything, I think breadth is very valuable right now compared to depth. I think hiring someone that has some amount of all of these skills as opposed to someone that's got very deep, say, reinforcement learning experience is much more interesting to me as a leader, because I know that they can handle the diversity of tasks that will come up and help make sure we're on the right path. And so just to kind of reiterate that, be somewhat competent in many things and steer the company as best you can because of that competency. If you don't really know anything about the cloud, you can't help them in that space. If you don't know very much about product management, you won't know if they're picking the wrong problems, or you won't know things like, hey, maybe we should have a metric to measure the success. Or did we talk about users and what are their acceptance? Like, what do they need from us? If you just get put on an island of data science where this is what they expect from you, but you don't have the breadth of skills to handle any of that, that's where you're going to fail, because you'll be really good at modeling and you'll end up with a notebook that you're really happy with, but the company won't be happy. And I think a lot of companies are in this state right now, and there's a lot of value in having that breadth, where that could change in 10 years when there's much more specialized roles and there's much more of an understanding of how to succeed with data. But I think you can have a huge opportunity to make a big impact on preventing failures if you can get this breadth. Anybody want to disagree with that?
I don't want to disagree. I want to kind of agree, but I think that data science is in the same position today as computer programming was, say, 15, 20 years ago, where the business knew that it needed to program stuff because computers were getting good and languages were being developed. And so you would hire a computer programmer, you'd have somebody go out and they'd write some business requirements, and then the programmer would build the requirements the way they thought they understood the business requirements. They'd deliver the software program, they'd deploy it, and it would function kind of sort of how the business person thought it was going to, or the customer thought it was going to, but not quite right. And so as computer development grew and progressed, you started to develop different sort of programming methodologies, Agile, Scrum, Lean, and now most companies are really good at following those types of practices for their development efforts. But data science, I haven't seen that same sort of agile methodology or Scrum methodology in companies that are following or trying to pursue some sort of data science strategy. They're just thinking that they need to implement some sort of data science. And so they hire a data scientist. The data scientist asks, what do you want me to do? The business says, well, I'd like you to do this. And then the data science team goes out and tries to deliver what they thought the business told them they wanted. And the same thing that happened 20 years ago is happening now, just in the data science arena. And so as data scientists, I love what you put together here, because I think that as data scientists, data analysts, data engineers, we need to follow and be the role models of kind of what you just suggested. And that is follow sort of the agile methodologies or whatever your software development methodology is. And have what I outlined and what I kind of summarized in what you were saying is, number one, have a clear strategy. And when I talk about a strategy, I'm talking, when you set personal goals, you talk about SMART goals. So your business strategy for data science has to be SMART. And then you have to put together and spend some time putting together a detailed plan. What exactly are you trying to accomplish based on that clear strategy, clear, measurable objectives? And then the management needs to kind of burn the boats. George Washington burned the boats and said, we're going to win or we're going to die. And back when I first got my very, very first job, we did an RFP to replace garbage trucks. And after the whole thing was over, I kind of grumbled and said, well, I think we made the wrong decision. And the city manager came and said, well, Scott, we have lots of discussions beforehand, but now that we've made the decision to switch to this new company, we're all committed to making it work. And so when it comes to a data science strategy, everybody needs to say, look, failure is not an option. We're going to succeed. What we know today may be different in 6 months, but we are going to figure out how to utilize data science to make this company better. And I think in solving the problems, I think it's more that we're not asking the right questions. What realistically can data science do for the company? And then starting, like, I think it was Faris or Dylan, can't remember which one of you said it, is starting small. Do something that you can do. If you want to, win a gold medal in the Olympics, you don't start going out competing in the big time races. You start slow and you develop your skill and you get better and better as you go. And I think data science needs to take the same approach.
Yeah, no, that's really great. I think that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, and I think one thing that trips people up a bit is data science problems are what I would consider complex problems, not complicated problems. And the interesting thing about these types of problems are both are hard, but the hard thing about complex problems is that there's a lot of unknowns. So like a complicated problem might be building a car. We just know so much about how to do it. You can set up a factory to do it, and there's like a waterfall effect where you do X, then you do Y, then you do Z, and you can do it really well. But with data science, often so many things are unknown through the process that the more a data scientist can handle on their own and move forward on their own, the more value they can create. Many of you have probably seen this where there's a handoff type thing between data science and engineers. It automatically means anything takes at least 2 weeks because you do your thing as a data scientist, and then you got to get into the engineer's sprint, and then they do their thing. So if it's each taking you 1 sprint, you're now a month to do anything. And kind of thinking about the number of shots you can take, you're now limited to 12 shots just because of the handoff. Where if you can build systems that allow data scientists to be much more agile on their own, you can take a lot of shots. Like at our company, we shipped 4 models in 10 days once before the end of the year, because data scientists can literally ship it themselves, even to the front end application that the users use. And so when you can get to that state where data scientists have a lot of flexibility to get things out, it's a lot easier to fail, because for us, if we build a model and we ship it as a beta and it's not good, it only took us like a week to get there, and we can then move on to the next thing. If getting to that beta state took us a month, then you've lost a month, right? And now you're down to 11 more tries that year, and no one wants to be there. So being able to have the skills to move your projects forward on your own is very valuable, in my opinion, that breadth.
Tyler, I have a quick question for you.
Yeah.
A lot of the companies I'm dealing with are very young and very small, and mentality is old school, and they don't even understand the need for data science at all. In some cases, you have a problem that they don't even understand social media or even keeping books. Is there some presentations you could share with us, or some information you could share with us? I guess, Joe, this question is for you as well, that I can get smaller companies excited about the need for data science.
On the profit sheet, Dad.
Well, what can I say? It's just that I'm seeing this every day. There's such a disconnect, and there's such a space right now between a lot of these younger, exciting companies, the really exciting companies, and I'm not talking about different age groups. It's right across the board. So whether it's the person who's still in the high school, through university, or close to retirement, right across the board, they've heard of data science, but they kind of skip it over because they've got so many other things to worry about.
I would add, here's an example anecdote of something I've heard about when Square kind of became a thing in the last 10 years, where anybody was kind of empowered to take a payment. A lot of business owners were able to utilize not just Square for the payment processing, but they actually are much more of a data-driven company in that they are showing their business partners like, hey, these are the kinds of customers that you're getting. And perhaps, that's where the data scientist comes in for those small businesses. But I think presentation's what matters after that capture. It's an interesting point. Just caveat for everybody. Yeah, this is my pops, but also he volunteers with, oh crap, it's the small business. And now, yes, SCORE, which helps out small businesses in general with small business mentorship. So.
Okay. Well, thanks. I didn't know that about Square. That's useful. And I'm sure a lot of them already have Square, so it will be nice.
We'll chat, definitely.
I'm also going to suggest this probably for the entire group here. If somebody's looking for a project or a data science project, to do an integration with Square and have that available to these businesses.
Yeah.
I would say a common business model that shows up for small businesses. If I were to categorize data science types of problems that small businesses and any size businesses face, your first order problems are like, if you have enough data forecasting, and your second one is customer churn and retention. So I think to the point of Square, that you can do customer churn and retention with a Square data set because it's transactions, and that's that type of data set lends itself very well to churn type problems. So it's something to consider.
Well, even inventory management is a start for them. Definitely.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of companies, depending where they're at, if they're not doing really anything with data, analytics is kind of like the gateway drug to data science. Like a lot of companies are just doing their thing, and then you're like, hey, they ever looked at your data? Like, what do you mean? And then you're like, oh, here's your churn rate. And you're like, oh man, I'm deleting 40% of my customers every month. I had no idea. What if I could keep some of those customers around? And you're like, you know what? There's this thing called the churn model that we can build for you. Like a lot of times people just don't know what the problems are. And when you do analytics on it, it kind of becomes obvious that there's something to learn from the data.
Well, and to that point, data, like another thing that I see about data science failing is trying to go too far too fast. Because like a data science model is only going to be good as the data that you clean to put in it. So if you have a lot of messy data, you might be, learning on something that is not relevant at all. So you got to first gather data, then you got to clean it, then you got to just say like what is going on. So this idea of like percent, like not even necessarily percent, just like numbers of customers that you have. Like, right. And that's sort of where you should stop and make sure that you validate the value of what your data is and the problems you're trying to solve, because that's where you actually deliver something. And there's actually a whole bunch of work that goes into just data gathering, cleaning, and presentation before you go on to doing the sciencey things.
Well, going back to the earliest parts of my career, I used to always get bugged by the one simple question: why are you capturing so much data that we don't need right now? And I've always put it into the models to be able to capture as much data as possible because of what's happening today.
Yeah, it's definitely useful. That's data tends to be useful in ways you don't expect. So it's worth logging if you can afford it. And I actually think it's good that when an executive doesn't care about AI or data science for AI or data science sake, I think it's up to us to be forthright with people about like, what are your actual problems, and is data science a solution to that problem that's reasonable? Because, you know, ego killer, maybe it's not. Maybe data science is not the answer to their problem. And that's okay, right? I think that's actually part of being a good data scientist, I think, is helping companies know, hey, it's okay if we just do some analytics here and do some averages. Like, that's okay. We'll be okay if we don't do deep learning or something.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that if you look at a lot of the companies that are kind of copied or followed in the data science world, it's interesting. You have the Googles and Amazons and so forth, right? And Uber, right? But they've applied machine learning and data science because it was an absolute necessity, because of the scale of the data and the velocity and everything else of the data they're dealing with. Like, you had no other choice. You can't manually do these processes at a fast rate. So you have to apply some sort of algorithm. I mean, look at, if you started Google back in the day, imagine there was no such thing as Google. I mean, how would you do that with that much data without applying AI or machine learning, right? I mean, so you got to harken back. I mean, these companies at the time were scratching their own itch just because they had so much data coming in so fast. Like, how else would you solve that problem?
Right.
But since then, other companies, you know, smaller companies, be like, well, we got to do that because that's what Google does, even though they don't have Google scale data or Google scale problems or anything related to Google at all, except the fact they made Google. How does Google do things in the browser? Yeah. So it's interesting, but I mean, and it's also, I think 2021 is going to be the year where like analytics isn't like a 4-letter word anymore. For the longest time, it's been sort of relegated to, it's sort of like the mullet of like the data world. And I think it's going to come back because analytics is useful and mullets are cool. So we'll find out.
Yeah, most people just need to understand their data. Like, that's analytics. Yeah, and another pro tip in my mind is, if Google's doing it some way, you should probably do it the other way. Like, almost certainly whatever Google's doing is not the way normal companies should be doing it, from hiring to data to machine. Like, it's usually an anti-pattern, unless you're using Google's cloud to do it for you because they're making it as a service. Just such different problems that they have than most companies. Things become different when you can throw 100 people on a problem. Anyways, so
the other tool I have been able to get 2 customers is the analytics from Google themselves, because Google is offering a lot of fairly inexpensive tools to small business customers. A lot of them aren't even aware of it.
I think they're really good. So if you can use them, I think you should. Anyways, I think we're getting close on time, but I think the how is the thing we haven't gone into yet. I'll go through this slide pretty quickly, but I've thought a lot about this, so I actually made a course about it. If you're interested, you can hit me up on LinkedIn and I can send you more information, and I'll just leave it at that. But there's a lot more you could talk about, like testing, production code, how to talk to business leaders. My course is, I think, like 58 videos on all that stuff that I found super useful, that whenever I hire people, they never know it, and it takes me like 6 months to teach it to them. So if you're interested in going deeper, that's an option. You can always find me on LinkedIn. And then the real way too, if you don't want to take a course, that I think is a really simple way is, and maybe people are familiar with this, is Ross Perot. If you see a snake, just kill it. The kind of history of this is, he was working at a company and like they had this culture of bureaucracy where it was kind of like, if you saw a problem, you just assume it was someone else's problem, or you'd like submit some paperwork to get a committee to like think about this problem. And when he kind of took over, he's like, this is the new rule. If you see a snake, just kill it. Don't appoint a committee on snakes. And I think, as data scientists, one way to just get better at having a breadth of skills is, if you see a snake, just kill it. If you see a problem that's preventing you to create value for your company, don't just be like, well, my value stops at the notebook or at the model. Like, I'm a data scientist. Don't bother me with these data cleaning problems or these product manager problems or communicating problems. Like, I think it's worth looking around, and when you run into issues, say, hey, I'm really getting blocked all the time because I don't have these skills. Maybe I can learn some of these skills and see if I can not be blocked as much as I am right now. It doesn't mean you'll be as good as maybe an expert in that field, but I guarantee if you go to an engineer and say, hey, here's my code, it's statically typed, it's got unit tests, it's got even integration tests if you make that easy for your team. I've had it code reviewed. I just want you to push it to production for me. I don't even know if they'll recognize you as a data scientist at that point, but those skills are not that hard to have, but they'll make such a difference in your ability to get to the end goal. And I think it's way too easy for data scientists to just say, I don't know how to do that, so it's not my problem, when most companies need you to do that. They don't have that for you, whereas maybe some bigger companies do. You know, maybe Google does, where they've got someone for every role and they have a really good system of handing things off that's really efficient that they like. But most people in Utah or that aren't working in like high tech, you're probably in a company that needs you to wear a lot of hats. And the more hats you can wear to some degree, it will make you feel like a unicorn to them. They'll be like, this is the person that when I give them a thing to do, they just get it done, even if that means doing things that are new to them. And then what you'll find is in like 5 years, you will be kind of like a unicorn. You'll be like, oh yeah, I've done a little bit of front end. I've done a little bit of back end. I've done some cloud. I've spun up instances. I've thought about queuing systems and Kubernetes and Docker and all these things. And you won't feel like it was so unapproachable as it maybe feels right now. At least that's my belief. So yeah, that's it. Why data science fails and what I think you can do about it. Any questions?
Thank you so much for the talk, Tyler.
Yeah.
Yeah,
thanks.
Golf clap, reaction clap, whatever you want to do. So.
Yeah, if you have any questions.
I have a question for you. Like, when did you start thinking about this in your data science career? Like, when did you start saying, yeah, like, I should start taking notes and making a whole course out of this down the road kind of thing?
I don't know. I started the course about 6 months ago, but I think I was fortunate when I joined Ancestry that a lot of people above me left, which sounds like a weird thing to say, but it allowed opportunities to present themselves for me to kind of get more visibility young or early in my career, I should say. And it became clear to me that there was just so much misunderstanding about how to create value with data science, and so many smart people that just didn't have, like, at that time, it was really popular to hire PhDs, right? And so it was like the solution to a failing data science team was hire another PhD. And it was just so clear to me that that was like not the need. And not because PhDs are bad or they don't have value, but because that wasn't the need that the company had. And so I think it became clear to me that if I could start to develop skills that were outside of just pure modeling and data science, that I could actually get a model in production. And like, that was a big deal. Like when I was at Ancestry, it's like, whoa, we got like a model in production and it's serving like billions of requests every day. And the only reason that happened is because I just forced it through. Like we did it on Kubernetes and Docker. I literally spent 3 weeks tracking down a Java memory leak in Docker because it was leaking memory whenever we deploy it. And some stupid Java flag wasn't turned on to manage the memory in this space of the kernel. And anyways, but like, that was just kind of my mentality, is like, I need this thing in production for me to be successful. And if it requires me figuring out Docker and Java memory leaks, if I don't do it, there wasn't really anyone else that's going to do it. Which is why I have a pretty strong belief that data scientists are smart enough to learn a lot of things. You just have to prioritize it. And a lot of data scientists don't, but I think it's a missed opportunity because usually that's quite valuable.
I had a question, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
First, I wanted to thank you for this. I relate to it. Just my capstone, I just wanted like a little bit of exposure to machine learning. in data science. So I built an image classifier, but the hardest part was deployment. And that, because this was the first model I'd ever built, I did not expect that. Like, it was actually pretty easy to build the model. And to learn how to build the model. But so I just got hired as an engineer rather than a data scientist. And so I'm wondering, like, if you have advice the other way of like things as an engineer that if I go to the data scientist team, because they'll be giving me their models and stuff, like what, like I'll love it if they give me their testing. What are they going to love if I bring to them, or like questions I can ask them?
Yeah, I think I love good engineers that understand data science, because you kind of get the data science trials and things that they're going to go through. And I think bringing some of that understanding to how you approach problems is super valuable, because a normal engineer won't get to, like, we needed to use PyTorch to build this image classifier because it's a deep learning. And you're like, why are you sending me this code that's got like 50 billion C dependencies? I hate you. Please take it back and change it. You'll kind of understand that, like, this is kind of what we need to figure out how to solve. And I would urge you to move the engineering towards building tools for data scientists. I think it will become an anti-pattern to hand off code from data science to engineers. I think the true pattern is engineers build tools that allow data scientists to deploy their own code. It's a lot harder to do that, but it's a lot more fun. Because if you could write something that, like, just unit testing, so when they push their code, it runs their unit test, you know, just a CI/CD thing on their GitHub or whatever you're using, and teach them how to write some unit tests, you've now given them a tool that allows them to do one more step on their own. And they won't do it perfect. You'll still have to help them, but your time helping fix their code will go from maybe 50% to 30%.
Right.
And I think that's a much more healthy way to think about it, is how can you help the data science teams do more things by themselves by building tools as an engineer to help them create value. And then you'll be doing more fun things because you'll be actually thinking about really hard engineering problems and not just like rewriting someone's crappy code.
That makes sense. No, that's helpful. I appreciate that.
Awesome question.
Well, you kind of answered my question, but how do you avoid doing everything though? Because in my case, I wanted to do, you know, just basic statistics at this internship that I'm at, and now I learned how to do a Windows server, and just to implement my simple statistics because everybody else was busy.
Right.
And
I think, sorry, go ahead.
I kind of felt like in a regular system, you would have people to help you deploy your code, you know, rather than having to do it yourself and then write instructions of how you did it.
Yeah, I think it's a good question. And I think it's a good question people should ask themselves. And I think a lot of it is really picking the right company and the right role. Because there are definitely jobs you can get where you're just going to do statistics all day and they've got people around you to make you successful. A lot of startups or smaller companies are not that. But maybe like academic or government positions like can be that, because they might have things around you to make that happen. Or like medical positions where, you know, statisticians are very common and they just do statistics. I think those are great roles. I think trying to understand before you take a job what other roles exist around you can be really valuable to help you understand how much of this full stack are you going to have to take on to create value. Because even if they don't expect it of you, if you kind of realize it, like, oh, there's no engineers, there's no whatever, that means for me to create value for you, I'm going to have to do this. You may not realize that, but I realize that. So unless you're planning on hiring people around me, this is maybe not a good fit for me. That's kind of how I think about a lot of PhD roles. Is research scientists are awesome, but most companies don't need research scientists. They need engineers that know data science, but there are positions that really do need people that do research, and that's what they do and that's what they're really good at. Those are just more rare roles. So it takes a little more time to find them, unfortunately. Okay. I don't know if that's helpful, but I think trying to be picky in the role you take, but it's hard because that takes time.
Yeah.
Time is money.
Yeah. And what questions would you ask in the interview, you think, to find that out?
I like asking who's going to be my manager, what's their background, who else is on the team, what are their backgrounds, what other teams do we interact with, and what are their backgrounds and what do they do, and try to talk to as many people across teams you'd work with. And if you talk to them and say, hey, have you ever helped any of these data scientists deploy anything? And they're like, what are you talking about deploying? And you're like, okay, that's a bad problem. Or just talking to a data scientist on the team, if they already have one, like, what's your day like? Do you write a lot of, deployment code, or are you just purely doing stats and math all day?
Right.
And I think candidates should be more, I think they should try to control the interview experience more than they do, meaning like you don't have to just talk to the people they put in front of you. Again, obviously this is somewhat of a risk because they might just tell you no. I mean, that's the only risk, is they'll say no, that's not really a big risk. And then you have to decide what to do with that. But that's kind of a red flag, right? And if you're in a position where you can take your time and be picky about where you go, you should, I think, be asking these hard questions. And if they don't give you good answers, I think that's a pretty big red flag that it's maybe not a good fit. But that's hard. I mean, I know a lot of people are trying to break in and a lot of people are struggling to break in, so it can be hard to be picky.
Yeah.
Thanks again for the questions and the presentation, Tyler.
Yeah.
This little guy's getting kind of sleepy, so I'm going to do the raffle. And but I always leave the Zoom going after this. Always feel free to ping me, direct message me with any questions. We're still going to have a Zoom meeting. We're not having a soiree directly for our meetup, but there is something happening. We're just planning it out. More details to follow with that stuff. A reminder, you need to be in the meetup Slack for today's meetup. There is a specific channel. You should be able to click on it, or you should be able to hit plus in your Slack and then join the channel. We'll be giving out a Pi portal and a Pi badge today. This one. And then Felix's bedtime story is going to be quantum computing for babies, of course. So, yeah. Let's see. And I would totally read it, but I will read it off recording because I don't want to, put up copyright work on YouTube. Yeah. All right.
You could always just stop the recording.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We'll stop the recording during our networking time, and then I'll read the story and then I'll sign off if that sounds good. All right, let me share my screen. And I have anti-pattern pulled up. Somebody was curious about that. So here's our code, how we determine the winner. Oh, soon, okay. I know, soon. Yeah. So make sure that you're in the meetup group, because pretty much what I'll do is I'll type in who. Oh, they changed it, huh? What is it? Is it still /who? Yes, okay, that worked. So, come on, buddy, work with me, work with me. I've noticed that the more I code one-handed, the more I'm really loving PyCharm these days.
Well, except it might be Russian spyware, so be careful.
PyCharm? Huh.
JetBrains just got listed as a possible, Russian hacking thing. So
I'm gonna follow up on you with that a little bit after this, but okay, I'm gonna save this. I got a baby in my hand. Okay, here, you're gonna go down here for now. Okay, and we will, does this look good to everybody for 2021? This is our peer review, our pull request. And then Joe, did you want to, actually, I'll take care of this. I got it right here. We have at least 2 meetup raffle prizes. So the first one, oh no, okay, see, you guys need to be better at pair programming. Let me see where Oh, you know what it is? Who can tell me the error here?
You're on Python 2.
And there we go. John Fackrell.
Woohoo. Thank you.
Congrats, John.
And next winner, place. Fitz. Awesome. And then Dylan, I'm no longer the host. Can you hit stop recording? And we will see everybody at the next meetup, which will be the first Wednesday of February. Somebody have that in front of them? Anybody?
The 3rd of February, we'll be doing our social event, soiree. It'll be fun. There'll be prizes. There'll be laughter. There'll be tears.
Good tears.
It'll be great. Good tears. Tears of joy.
Oh. And then do you want to stop the recording? And then I'm going to read him a bedtime story before he keeps playing with your Legos, Dylan. Dylan gave Felix all his childhood Legos. Just call him.